everyone, welcome to Bello's Designs. My name's Catherine, and today we're going to be making this card that I am calling a Tranquil Swim using some Sweet Poppy items. Let's talk about what we'll need to get started. For this card, I have used some distress watercolor cardstock. If you have the Lavinia cardstock that is hot pressed, you might want to use that. You probably will get a little bit of a smoother result. I'll be using the distress because that's what I have on hand. And it does have one side that's smooth and one side that's rough. I'll be stamping on the smooth side. When the card is finished, I will be cutting this down to 4 by 5 1/4 inches. In addition to that, I'll be using a piece of black cardstock that I have trimmed down to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 inches. And then we'll also want our card base, and I have taken a piece of multifarious cardstock and I have trimmed that down to 8 1/2 by 5 1/2 inches, and it's scored right down the middle to make our card. Here's what we'll need for stamps to get started. I have the Turtle Stamp Set, which is, I believe the item number on it is Turtle A6 from Sweet Poppy. And we'll be using the turtle and also the It's Your Birthday Make a Splash on the inside of our card today. If you'd like, you can make this into a Father's Day card as well. We'll also be using the summer stamp from the A6 Stamp Set season, and I do believe that the item number is SEASO, also from Sweet Poppy. And finally, we'll be using the seaweed from the Seahorse Stamp Set, and I believe the item number on that is Seahorse A6. We'll also be using the Lavinia masking sheets. And I have pre-stamped my turtle and cut that out in order to mask our turtle off at the end and stamp our seaweed in the background. Let's talk about the inks that we'll be using. I'll be using the Versafine Clair Warm Breeze, Versafine Clair Twilight to stamp our turtle. I have Versafine Clair in Verdant and Versafine Clair in Morning Mist, and we'll be using those for the seaweed. And then to blend our background, I'll be using the Lavinia Elements in Blue Atoll. I also have the Sweet Poppy watercolor fine tip brushes, and I went ahead and purchased set 2. I really like these, so in the future I'll probably be also adding the set 1 to my collection. But I have gone ahead and made a little swatch of the colors that I will be using on our card today. So we'll start with the body of the sea turtle. We'll be using the moss and the meadow. And then for the shell, I'll be using a combination of the shamrock, the sky, the cyan, and the azure. And then of course we'll want our blending brush to help us blend those colors together. And in the Sweet Poppy set, these blending brushes, when you fill them up with water, you're going to want to remember to twist the top to add the water clockwise, and it just seems backwards to how we would normally do that. I have a few blending brushes that come apart this way, and then I have some others where they twist in what would seem the right way and not backwards. So if you have blending brushes and you're struggling to get them open, just try twisting them in the opposite direction. I'll also be using one blending brush to blend our Lavinia Elements. And in order to stamp our turtle, I'm going to go ahead and use my stamp platform. I have my stamp platform set up. I'll be using a combination of my magnet and a sticky mat to help hold that in place. I like to use both so that if my project shifts at all while I'm stamping, it's super easy to push it back into the corner and just make sure it's lined up. And since I don't have it right in the corner, I can get a nice even pressure. So I'll go ahead and lay my stamp down right where I'd like it to stamp, and then close it to pick up that stamp. I'll use my Twilight Versafine Clair to ink up my turtle. I like using my stamp platform because it makes it easy to get a nice even stamp. And if anything happens and it doesn't stamp quite perfectly, we can just re-ink it and go over it again, and you might see that it looks like we missed a little bit of the corner of his fin, and so we will just go right ahead and ink this up a second time. And restamp it, and I'll make sure I give that a little bit of extra pressure in that spot just to make sure I get a nice bold stamp. Maybe one more time just to get that spot we missed. Okay, there we go. That looks pretty perfect, and I think it's ready for us to start coloring. All right, for the turtle's body, I'll be using a combination of my water blending brush along with the meadow and the moss. So what I like to do is just get a little section of the turtle's body wet with the blending brush, and then I'll start with the moss around the outside and blend in with the meadow to the insides. All right, so as you can see, that went pretty quickly, and I just went through with my water blending brush and moistened the areas I wanted to paint in. And then I just went back and forth with my moss and the meadow. And you can kind of play around with it and see what you like and how it comes out. It will tone it down a little bit when we blend the blue over the top at the very end. So now I'm going to move on to the shell, and I'm actually going to use a combination of the meadow and the blues for the edging. So we'll be doing the edge of his shell with the meadow and the sky, to be precise. So I'm going to go ahead and get that part started, and then finally I will come in and fill in the spots on his shell. So the last part of the turtle is going to be the spots on the shell, and this is the part of this project that I found to be the most relaxing and enjoyable. And I just really went back and forth between the remaining colors, which are the shamrock, the cyan, and the azure, and just blended them in to get this look. So this is where you can just relax and enjoy your painting and have fun with it. So in true fashion, I thought I was recording the video, but I actually only managed to snap a couple of pictures, and I completed this card. But it's your lucky day because I happen to have a backup on hand, so I'm going to go ahead and go through that. I've also stamped a little bit of my seaweed onto an envelope, and let's go ahead and make a second copy of our sea turtle. So I'm going to start with the seaweed stamp, which I have mounted onto a stamp block. And I'm going to begin with the Verdant Green and just randomly do a few pieces of seaweed around the outside of my turtle. And you can even do a couple over him and it'll look like he's swimming through the seaweed. And the dogs have managed to hold it together while I've been working on this today, but I hear Daisy right there in the background. All right, in order to do the summer stamp, I decided to do a 3rd generation. So I'm going to ink up my stamp and then stamp it off on my scrap paper twice before I put it on my card. And this will give me a little bit of a fainter image. And we'll just randomly put those in there. All right, now that I'm finished with that, I'm going to come in with my blending brush and my blue Atoll from Elements by Lavinia, and I'm just going to blend in around the background. I'm actually going to take the mask off of my image first because I did like on my samples how blending over the turtle's shell kind of helped to mute and soften some of the colors that I used to paint him in. So it's best to go light when you're blending, and you could use the inside of your lid as a palette, and then later you're able to pick up some of that ink if you'd like to use it for a watercolor technique, but you're not really wasting it. And it's a nice way to make it go a little further. Okay, folks, so here we have it. Here's the image that I previously stamped and colored in, and this is the one that I stamped and colored in with you today, but forgot to switch from camera to video when I did this background. So we have two. I'm going to come in with my black micro tip marker and just touch up their eyes, and now we have two cards to make together today. I'm back and I have my paper trimmer ready. I like to make my card fronts just a little bit larger than what they're going to be when they're finished, because I find that if I blend the backgrounds, I get this thin line around the edges, and I'd really like to clean that up and trim that off. So I'm going to come back and I want to take about, let's see, so this was 4 1/8 by 5 3/8, and I want this to be 4 by 5 1/4. So I'm going to trim about a 1/16 of an inch off of each edge. Just to get that down to 4 by 5 1/4. Oops. Oh, that moved. Not a good thing. Here we go. All right. Now we're ready. So all right, so that's ready to add to the black cardstock. Now I have a piece of bright green that I really liked, and I think it does also frame our stamped image nicely. This cardstock is just a little bit shorter than the black one, so I'm going to measure it out, and it is 4 inches already. So I would like the finished card to be 3 3/3 of an inch high, maybe a little bit less than that, maybe 3 7/8. So I'm going to go ahead and just trim off about 1/16 of an inch from each side, just to get that down to where I'd like it to be. And then we'll do the same thing. Well, let's measure it just to make sure. So this is already at 5 1/4 inches, so I'm going to want it to come down to 5 1/8 of an inch wide. So I will go ahead and just trim off about 1/16 of an inch from each side. Just once again, cleaning up those edges and making it look nice and smooth. Let's see. There we go. And we've just cleaned off all the way around the edges. All right, I'm going to use my glass mat to glue my card fronts down, and then I can weigh them with a block afterwards just to make sure it's nice and flat, although we didn't get our watercolor cardstock very wet while we were making this project, so we shouldn't have too much trouble getting a nice flat finish. I just like to do a nice thin bead right around the edge, and then a little bit more in the middle, just to hold it down and get a nice clean adhesion. It's nice and flat. The nice thing about using a liquid glue is that you have a little bit of wiggle room, and it makes the bond a little bit stronger on your finished project. But on the other hand, if it moves, you're kind of stuck with it. So there we go. There's one. Let's go ahead and do the second one. There we are. So we have our card fronts, we have our original card, and a couple of fun envelopes to go with it. And of course we can add them to our card base of multifarious cardstock, and we have a nice heavy professional card that we finished. Thanks for stamping with me today, and I hope that you'll give the watercolor pens a try. They're certainly lots of fun. Bye-bye.